The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. At a little more than 5 years, the prodigal son of WWE, Shane McMahon, returned back to Vince's prowess and back to the kingdom of World Wrestling Entertainment, and now he's gone again. And there's a lot behind it. And we didn't really pay attention to Shane being back on television in any kind of figure or what kind of things he was doing behind the scenes. But we heard a lot about it after the Royal Rumble. And that is some of the focus on what we're going to have on here on this Wrestling is Real podcast. Thanks for being with me. And now into the story itself. He was going to be booked for future shows. The original thought was a couple different ways. Some thoughts were saying that Shane McMahon may take on Seth freaking Rollins, or Austin Theory. That's where things were. So Shane was trying to get in his program, the WrestleMania program that he's entitled to have every year. And for whatever reason, things really went to shit because he and Jamie Noble were responsible for the booking of the Royal Rumble match. That has gone all over Twitter for the last couple of days, and now I'm here to talk about it. Dave Meltzer reported the news Wednesday, confirming an early report by Ringside News. Shane McMahon's out of the company, but it's unknown whether his talent deal was terminated or if the plans for the next 2 months for him were simply dropped. So he'd been away from in-ring action for nearly a year. He was around for last year's WrestleMania and then took time off. And he entered the Saturday's Men's Royal Rumble match and was eliminated by Brock Lesnar. And that following the Royal Rumble, Meltzer said on Wrestling Observer Radio that there was a lot of heat on McMahon due to his booking of the Men's Royal Rumble match, which he performed and helped with in the past. And Shane, according to Meltzer, says he had an idea of what the Rumble was going to be, and then a lot of it ended up being changed, which rubbed some people the wrong way. Andrew Zarian of the Matman podcast tweeted that specifically there were numerous changes for what number Bad Bunny would be in the Rumble. And this is where the point of contention is where Bad Bunny was being utilized and how he's being utilized in the Royal Rumble because of how big a star he is and how much, exposure he gets and how he needed to be positioned correctly in that show. Well, Shane is no longer scheduled to be in the Elimination Chamber. It's now Austin Theory who took his spot. And he won a qualifying match over Kevin Owens on Raw. So Shane's gone. Now, we can try to speculate what this all means and what is this all going on? Why did this all happen? Why are we where we are now with this and what happened to him? There's not much to say. I mean, there's a lot we can speculate as to, does it matter? Does Shane have that much of a deal? Obviously, the Palace intrigue is continuing now by my fellow podcast brethren, talking about, Triple H is now, out of commission, and now Shane McMahon's been let go. So anybody that Nick Khan believes in the family is a hindrance is being removed, eliminated, if you will. I don't know if that's really much true or not, but I get why they're trying to say all that. So with that, Ringside News said it was the fact that he was quietly let go. And that's really all we have. But does it make a difference that he's not going to be around here anymore? I mean, the Royal Rumble match wasn't as bad as I really thought it was. I know we have a fan base that they are frenzied, frothing that they need to have something big happen. I get it. Everybody's got to be up and at it and say, well, there's not enough surprises on this in this event. Why does it have to be Brock Lesnar always the one winning the match? Why can't it be some younger stars? It's the thought process that NXT created. Meanwhile, the NXT thought process, the black and gold mindset, is not what Vince McMahon wanted. And I can beat this over the head as many times as possible, but it doesn't make a difference. For him, his matter was they were going to try to do what they could to book that show, make it a big gate, put as many big stars as you can there, then coming up for Saudi Arabia to appease the Saudi princes, and then WrestleMania. That's a lot of seats to fill. That's a lot of money to be made off of merchandise, which, by the way, of merchandise, Bad Bunny, who was featured in the Royal Rumble, had one of the most successful merchandise pickups at the show, at the Royal Rumble. And then Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch, Roman Reigns, and Brock Lesnar. So what else do you want? Feeding the ego, feeding the confidence of the IWC that we need to have other stars being there because we see what other companies are doing. And WWE, more than anything else, we need to have fresh talent. We've been talking about that for years. They're not giving us anyone like that. Now, that doesn't mean they're not making the attempt to try to build stars. The way they do it is always wrong, but they are trying. Austin Theory, they're trying with him. They're trying with Damian Priest. They're trying with Bianca Belair. That's more than I can say that what they've done in the past. But this is normal. For them to go ahead, for Vince to have the initiative to go ahead and book somebody that they're winning over and over and over again, but the company doesn't take enough time to interweave storylines, and to make them where you're emotionally invested in the stars. We're not emotionally invested at all. And if they are, it's kind of an underdog kind of thing, which does not work well in this company. It doesn't. If the fact that Roman Reigns continues to be headlining WrestleManias, well, because he can. They've built him so much to the point where he can be there now. And the hottest storyline they have is Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. And Brock Lesnar, they're using on 2 shows because they're having to fill the void. Hey, the void that they need to fill that they've created, yes. But what are you going to do about that? And there is nobody right now in the current setup. Doesn't matter if Shane was going to be involved or intertwined, whatever it was, or if you have Bruce, or if you have John Laurinaitis, or if you have Vince, or whatever. The creative process is going to stay the same. If they want to tell storylines, they can. If they want to tell stories, they can. They told a very good storyline, in my opinion, on how to book Seth Rollins and keep him strong. The DQ finish made sense to me. So I don't have a problem there. And the whole idea originally was Roman Reigns was supposed to go and beat up Seth Rollins altogether. And then there was a talk about having a post-match beatdown with the chairs. Instead, they didn't want to have Seth destroyed like that. They took the best. They took the lesser two evils. They took half and half. Give the DQ win to Seth, and then give him the Shield-type beatdown to further that storyline, which they can go back to that anytime they want. This is not perfect, but at least this is the attempt for this company in this current form to do that. Of a creative team that is lacking continuity. They don't want to do it like this. They're not worried about trying to connect the dots. We've said that. How many times have I said that line? I stopped saying that a long time ago. Got tired of saying it. They will not. They, in some cases, do not want to put significant or special moments in an angle as they try to tell a story from beginning to end. They can't do it. Okay? You guys want soap opera-like storylines where every week another compelling, dramatic, dynamic cliffhanger happens every week, and you want our stars to be in peril and then come around to save the day. It's not what they're going to do. They choose not to do that because what they have right now are stars that could be heels, could be baby faces. Of the stars on top right now, they're all tweeners. In my mind, they're all tweeners. They can be adjusted as such. Ronda can be perceived as face or heel. Becky, Charlotte, if you want to have the same thing for Roman or Seth or Bobby or Brock, they're all interchangeable. But what they have is a box office acumen. They have this spectacle. And one of the things that Shane McMahon had was, nepotism. He did have the prestige of being able to be notoriously good at, I don't know if he was necessarily good at helping certain stars get over, because he was really just trying to enhance with various stars. I don't know if he really helped out when it came to his matches with Kevin Owens or with Braun Strowman. In a way, I think he did help. Believe it or not. I think with Kevin Owens, it did help him to have that feud. When he had Braun Strowman, I think it would have helped him in that feud. But the follow-through was horrible. With The Miz, I think it helped him in that feud. I really do. I think Shane was significantly helping in the feuds he'd have at WrestleMania as an enhancement and would have that featured match. Whether it be a Hell in a Cell or jumping off a cage or whatever the hell he had to do, I thought he was actually effective. I really did. And when I even think back at some of the storylines, when I think about, just a simple storyline of Braun Strowman, you're stupid, right? Even that, all you got to do is just get Braun Strowman to go huffing and puffing and just go after. It worked for me. Shane was effective in that. And the one thing was, I don't know what Shane really, we never really knew what he contributed or what he did. I felt like he just bounced around the company. But there was never a set role for him because for the most part, he was just an off and on television personality. But that's what he was. He was taking it easy, had his shows. He'd be there for more sort of part-time status. He'd be with his wife and kids. He'd be doing other things and working on investing in other projects. Like back in September last year, he's now working on a cannabis-related business. He put down, what was it, $500,000? Onto, was it EnviroGrow, which makes these kind of humanoid type houses, type of housing dwellings, like individual homes to store cannabis in. And, he had other ventures. I mean, the thing is, Shane, I don't know why they did not use him behind the scenes and why he never wanted to go ahead and take any kind of initiative to kind of, if Triple H was not going to be the person to bring on, why isn't Shane McMahon working alongside Nick Khan? Because for me, I'm looking at Shane and I say to myself, Shane has so much of a business acumen. I mean, he is much as a business person as Stephanie is, as Paul Levesque is. And I don't know why they never used him that way. When you look at what Shane McMahon was doing coming back, he came back as just to be part of what he was. He was, he left in 2009 and became part of China's over-the-top streaming services. You On Demand. He was chairman and CEO. And while they were doing this, they were aggressively trying to go ahead and create subscription and over-the-top services in China, much like what the WWE Network was doing at the time. Very early days, pioneering to try to get this going on. And at the time when he came back in 2016, there was a thought he might come back as an executive officer. But when you look at everybody else that's in here, Stephanie is always going to have her spot right now. She's the chief brand officer. She's on the board of directors for the company. She's been there since February 2015. So her status is there, period. Whatever could happen with Stephanie, whatever Nick Khan decides to do, Stephanie will still be a figurehead in the company. And even if she doesn't stay in the role of chief brand officer down the line, if she decides to go ahead and step away, or she decides to stay there for as long as she wants, and McMahon remains in WWE, however things are configured now, to becoming this global media content company, as Nick Khan has referred to it as, she's there. She is a principal owner of the company. And I don't know if Stephanie and Hunter will stay in the same kind of setup, but we'll find out. And we don't know if Triple H is coming back at any point. He could very well, but whatever health issues he's having right now, there's no hurry for him to come back. Even though everybody's going to be upset about what he's been doing. Now, Shane always, as the eldest son, for whatever reason, he kind of went ahead and did things his own way. spent more than 20 years learning the ropes, filled a myriad of roles from in-ring performer. He was a referee, an in-ring superstar. He was at one point president of new media and executive vice president of global media. So he was working in the initial digital end of the company's business. Now, he had creative ideas for TV programs that were rejected. The company's investment in emerging platforms such as the internet was narrowly focused on their online shop and collecting ad revenue for their website. So Shane was looking towards the future. And with that mindset alone, why can't Shane stay on board as some kind of a consultant? Like, you want a McMahon to still have what Vince's vision is embedded into what Nick Khan's doing. I mean, meanwhile, Nick Khan's going to go ahead and do what he's going to do. But for Shane to go ahead and drop out, I don't know what's going to happen. But when he decided to leave, in 2009, he actually even talked about he never even considered a future outside of the walls of the WWE. But sometimes life takes an unexpected turn, and while it is the most difficult decision I've ever made, it is time for me to move on. So he wasn't afraid to do that last time, because he did it. And then at the time, there was a lot of speculation that everybody heard about. Internal succession power struggle between Shane and Stephanie and Paul. And then there was others that said Shane's desire to fully run an independent organization, that he was in negotiations rumored to purchase established organizations like Pride FC or independently control the WCW brand after it had been acquired by WWE. And BuzzFeed actually talked about this in 2014. And they talked about that Shane, and this is according to Court Bauer, who runs MLW, that Shane lacked the ruthlessness of Vince and knew that he wasn't going to be chosen as Vince's successor. And Shane would always deny there was any kind of a civil war with his sister. He insisted he just wanted to make it on his own, and knowing that being at the company would mean he would be stuck in his father's long shadow. Now, this story I'm taking from Seeking Alpha in 2016 when Shane returned. So, the fact that Shane's leaving, the fact that he already has corporate experience with global media and pay-per-view distribution from WWE, he had experience with the Chinese marketplace. So, I mean, even if it was just doing something for global deals and trying to get those orchestrated would be great. In the end, you would talk about how Shane McMahon would go ahead and would always be so committed to whatever project he was in, he invested in those companies. He put his own money in. And in the Chinese deal, he forsook his salary in an effort to conserve company cash. This is something that says a lot about where he tried really hard to try to make something big. Now, I don't know if Shane is still on the board of directors for You On Demand, so he could very well much go back into things. And who knows where he could step himself in once again all over. Like, he could always come back somewhere else and find himself somewhere else he wants to go. But things have changed. Times have changed, and the fact that Shane's no longer with the company tells you more that Nick Khan, doesn't, as we're hearing from Court Bauer, Shane wasn't going to be someone who was going to be at the forefront alongside Nick Khan projecting the vision of this company. That was not where he was going to be. So he was content just working where he was going to be as a talent and doing other things they might have asked him to do, because it still was a family company. But the transition from a non-family company now to a global media content company doesn't require all the McMahons on board. Now it could change. So now Vince is there with Hunter, who is right now on hiatus, and Stephanie. That's it. But they're all following along in lockstep with the vision that Nick Khan's going along with this company. As far as they're concerned, they had a great gate for their show. The Royal Rumble performed in terms of the audience. They got 44,390 at the show. People can go and complain about, the stage took away half the arena because they could have probably put 75,000 in, but that stage is what it is. And that's still a pretty damn good crowd. And they're going to do well in Saudi Arabia. They already got a couple matches set up. Lita versus Becky Lynch for the women's title. And then you have the Elimination Chamber match for the men. Which, it's where they're going to have Brock Lesnar try to go ahead and take the WWE Championship away from Bobby Lashley, who everybody wants to go and complain about how if it was weak on how he won the belt. I don't think so. People want to try to say that Bobby Lashley's been booked weak, and he still is. No, compared to Big E, he's not. Bobby Lashley, even in the DQ, had a very good 12-minute match with Brock Lesnar, and at some points almost had the win. Like, it's not one of those things where it was like a 6-minute match and Brock was just suplexing all over the place. Like, it was one of those big guy matches, but Bobby Lashley stuck it out. Bobby Lashley's already had WrestleMania appearances. I mean, he's going to be in WrestleMania. Just don't know where he's going to be at. I just hope he gets to stay with that belt. And they figure out what they're going to do after that. But if Brock Lesnar's going to be in Elimination Chamber, I don't see where he has to win. Not when you got 6 people in the match. We can always think that something happens where he does get taken out. I don't know. But that's where things are, and I'm not worried too much about it. Now, I do want to go and talk about one thing. Brian Kendrick was supposed to go and appear and debut for AEW until a High Spots interview from 2013 reared its ugly head and comments about the Holocaust, which, for whatever reason, people are talking about now because Whoopi Goldberg just got suspended for The View for 2 weeks because of some comments that were made that did not go well. Now, I'm not going to talk about anything more than that. So, for whatever reason, Brian Kendrick was under contract and was working at NXT all this time, and nobody brought it up. But as soon as he goes to AEW, somebody pulls this interview out, and that's enough. Brian Kendrick is canceled. So, it's what he decided to do. Now, Raw pulled the highest total viewership since August for Royal Rumble, and I said it. I thought 2 million viewers was going to be possible. Well, they didn't get 2 million viewers throughout the whole show, but they got it from the first hour. 2.083 million for the first hour of the show, 1.879 for hour 2, and then it just drops off like normal, 1.633 for hour 3. Compared to last year, they pulled 2.128 million viewers for the first show of 2021, and when they got to the post-Royal Rumble, it was 1.892 million viewers, and that's it. But the show did get a bump in viewership. So overall, things are looking good regardless of what people think of the current state of the product, which I understand everybody can complain about. But it's the money they continue to make. I'm not going to go too long tonight. I'm going to wrap things up pretty early, keep this about a half hour, because I did do a post show for Royal Rumble on Saturday, and I'll leave it at that. Like, I don't want to go and beat over the head all the other things that were going on. But WrestleNomics put a good thing about how they were going to preview the fourth quarter earnings for the company for WWE coming up and how well they were doing. So they're already predicting all the things that most likely the company was going to go and report annual revenue surpassing $1 billion for the first time. It's according to WrestleNomics that's putting this out there. So Brandon Thurston and Jason Unprasuth putting this story out there, that their estimates said that the company got revenue $1.102 billion, or net income of $174.5 billion. And then there's a lot of that's going to be talked about here where WWE is going to try to go ahead and make a serious point about the media rights for their programming and how important it is for them to see a significant increase the next time around. The terms are near 2 years away from expiring, but they're the most valuable U.S. sports rights renewal on the horizon. Because right now, other organizations have already gotten theirs. NFL, NHL, Premier League rights have already been taken care of. And current deals with the NBA and MLB are actually extended beyond 2024. So there's also flirtations by the major tech companies, Facebook, Amazon, well, now Meta, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google, or Alphabet, that are driving optimism. And the idea that Apple and Amazon are still showing interest in live sports. So WWE could still be looked at by other bettors to be a part of things going on. But then you go ahead and talk about the ratings, which is obviously going to be brought up by the shareholders and by the media there's always a continued running decline of TV ratings. And the question would be, doesn't that mean we should be cautious about the value of the company's key programs? Well, Raw has fallen below the general decline of linear TV in some recent years, not in 2021. SmackDown on Fox held up better over the years thanks to improved time slots and networks, and SmackDown actually held up better throughout the fall, while Raw suffered with Monday Night Football. And AEW Dynamite on TBS continues to draw nearer to both Raw and SmackDown with viewers in an important 18 to 49 ad demographic. A fact that WWE has reacted to by framing AEW as a more violent alternative, unattractive to business partners and viewers. So next week, we'll get the earnings call, and we'll talk about that and see what they say. That call is coming up Thursday, so we'll find out about what's going to be. So tomorrow, as I record, we'll find out what that is, and then we'll get some of the reports and what they say off the call. We'll get some of the information off of that. Because Nick Khan will be on that call. Vince will be on that call. We're all going to be curious what he say. So keep it there. Now, I don't want to bring up anything about what Raw and SmackDown having this week, but I do want to take some points and talk about what was going on with the AEW and what they're doing right now when it leads up to all that they're working on. Tonight, MJF defeats CM Punk in a wonderful 40-something-odd minute match where the continuous work of MJF to try to go ahead and screw over and cheat the win as the heel that he is gave CM Punk his first loss on AEW, which was a fantastic match. A really calculated, methodical, and just very well put together. A very good match all in all. Now you got Paige Van Sant now going after Brandy Rhodes, so the whole Dan Lambert deal, not necessarily going after Cody Rhodes right now, but now attacking Brandy Rhodes, so you'll see where that goes with things. Bryan Danielson now looking to propose to work together and partner with Jon Moxley now that he's back, which encompasses what they were doing right now at AEW, which for the most part I have enjoyed a lot. Watching Dark Elevation, and knowing what those shows are going to be, which is, it's good little enhancement matches that are not too long, and the commentary is fun, and I can enjoy it. It's great for that part. And then going along and seeing what they're doing with various things with Dynamite and Rampage, they're giving us good, compelling storylines, and like the shows are consistently doing pretty good for what I see on a regular basis. The current setup of shows right now, I'm looking at ratings. Rampage is consistently around the 520 to 600,000 viewer mark. Raw stays around 1.6, 1.7 million, but now we'll get the boost thanks to WrestleMania time. Dynamite, since their move to TBS, has hovered around the 1 million mark. They got the 1.1 million last week. We'll see how they do this week. Especially with that CM Punk MJF match, that should get a bump. Impact Wrestling now is consistently getting over 100,000 viewers, which is great news. Not as much fluctuation as once was, but that's because they're also doing things right now post Hard to Kill, where you have the Ring of Honor No More faction and Bullet Club. Like, you're getting a lot more presence in that, and that's what's kind of getting things over a little bit. And I guess the Moose storyline is actually kind of playing out really well. Mickie James in the company right now as Impact Knockouts champion, so there's some buzz going on over there. They're getting a little bit of an audience, which is nice. SmackDown's consistent, 2.1, 2.2 million. That's good. And then the show they have in here that we got to talk about is NXT. And for the naysayers that thought that NXT was going to continue to fall apart, it has not. It's continued to do well. And, for the most part, I don't mind what they've been doing with it. So this past week, it's 619,000 live viewers, up from last week. And the show's kind of consistent in the same round when it comes to the 18 to 49 demo. It's interesting, a few things I get a little observations when it comes to NXT. And I look at how they like to have big heavies accompanying or managers accompanying certain stars, which is something that's not so common on the main roster. But when you see now Robert Stone accompanying Von Wagner, when you see Joe Gacy accompanied with Harlan, or when you're seeing Grayson Waller coming out with Sangha, who was part of the Indus Shared tag team they had previously. So they're doing some of that. they obviously have really gone a big part in trying to create certain stars and really just some off-the-wall characters. Some that are kind of copies. Cora Jade does feel like a copy of Sky Blue. Even though I know Cora Jade has more exposure than Sky Blue does. Wendy Chu reminds me of Orange Cassidy, but not too much of a scale. And then there's still some stars they have that are very much, established, but are they going to go anywhere? In the NXT 2.0 system, there are some stars, I don't know what they're going to do. Imperium, I don't see if they get called up at any time to the main roster, if they're going to get used or not. I don't know if Gunther's going to get pushed up. When I look at Legado del Fantasma and that whole group, are they ever going to get called up? Because part of it, too, is that, you got a lot of Spanish stars up there, and that's the gimmick. Like, that's partly what the gimmick is. Are they going to be able to pull anything off to go and bring them up there to that main roster? There's only so many spots right now that are being kept, and, like, what are you going to do next? The other group is the Diamond Mine, which, they got some younger stars in there, but are they going to really be standing out or not? I don't know. It's just a lot of things that come up in my mind that I think about. But that's all I have. I'm going to keep it short tonight because there is more to talk about, but I'm not going to get to another rant tonight. Like I said, we did 45 minutes of the Royal Rumble. I'm giving you about 30 plus minutes tonight. That's about all it's going to take. And I'll leave it there. It's one of those rare times. The news was not much, and I'm not going to go, relishing on Shane much more or anything else. I can kind of leave that without. Thanks for listening to another Wrestling Goes Raw podcast, and subscribe to the show. Please make sure to rate and review, especially only on a couple of reviews on Apple Podcasts. If you haven't subscribed on Apple Podcast yet, please do so. Give me some love over there, and give me some love on Spotify as well. That'd be really nice. And, of course, check out the website, wrestlingisreal.com. Wrestlingisreal.com. I put it up there. Latest episodes. You see links to new news articles. Where you can find the show, where you can find me on social media, it's all right there for you. So thank you so much for listening in. Come back next week for another Wrestling Goes Raw podcast because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling Is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at wrestlingisreal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts. And search King of Podcasts on YouTube or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.